Good afternoon, everyone. Apologies, but the great irony was we had some technological issues ahead of our technology panel discussion, so you can all laugh along with us. My name is Jeff Overmars. I am a communications advisor at the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this third session of the day during Nova Scotia Human Rights Week. I will take a moment briefly to acknowledge that we're coming to you virtually from Mi'kma'ki, the traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq Nation. Mi'kmaq people have made this land their home since time immemorial, and they are the past, present, and future caretakers of this land. The Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission embraces Mi'kmaq teachings such as Imsit Nogama, meaning all my relations, which acknowledges the inherent interconnectivity of all beings. We hope that you'll find this conversation helpful in kind of parsing some connections yourselves. I would also like to acknowledge the deep contributions of people of African descent within the province of Nova Scotia to advancing equity and inclusion, not only for their own communities, but for all communities in Nova Scotia. People of African descent have called Mi'kma'ki their home for over 400 years. And in that time, they have fought persistently against issues of discrimination, anti-Black racism, and segregation. People of African descent are also behind, I would say, the foundation and establishment of the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission and the drafting of the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act. The Commission continues to build upon their legacy of advocacy and in pursuit of greater equity and inclusion for all people. Again, thank you for gathering here today for this discussion. I'm really excited about it as someone who uses technology as part of my daily life. I wanted to just acknowledge that we've got ASL interpretation with Cindy on the line today. If you wish to spotlight Cindy, you can do so by using your mouse. Also, the chat is not enabled, but we would invite folks to post any questions you may have within the Q&A box, which you'll find at the bottom of the screen. And I should say also, if you can't use your mouse, you can tab and use the proper key function so that you'll be able to attain the pin function or the spotlight function for Cindy. One last thing to say is that captions are enabled, and you would be able to turn those on by clicking the close caption button at the bottom of the screen. Without further ado, I did want to introduce our esteemed panelists here today. Blake Huntsley is the Special Projects Lead at reachAbility. He's joined by his colleague, Franco Martinez, and as well, Milena Khazanavicius. Khazanavicius.
You're enjoying
Can I
it.
try Khazanavicius? Did I get it right this time?
Very good.
I did it.
Good job, Jeff. Good job. But it's Milena.
I want to hear you say it, Milena.
Milena. Say Milena. If you can get Milena right, I'll forgive you my last name.
Milena Khazanavicius.
There you go.
Khazanavicius.
Khazanavicius, just like it's spelled.
Well, without further ado, please take it
Perfect.
away, group over at reachAbility.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much for inviting us to be a part of this week. We're really happy to celebrate Nova Scotia Human Rights Week and to have celebrated International Day of Persons with Disabilities this week as well. We had originally intended to present this conversation on International Day of Persons with Disabilities, but we needed to make sure that we had very helpful and lovely Cindy here doing ASL. Thank you very much, Cindy. We're thrilled to have you here today, and we are always more than happy to wait an extra day if we have to make sure that it is as accessible an event as possible. My name is Blake Hunsley. As Jeff said, I work for reachAbility. I'm the head of special projects here, which means I do panels like this, and I host our upcoming Within Reach podcast, which you'll be able to hear next month. We have two very special guests today, Milena Khazanavicius, I believe is how it's pronounced, and Franco Martinez, which I don't think I've mangled too badly. For those of you who can't see me here today, I'll do my best at a visual description. You can't tell how short I am sitting down, so I would love to pretend to be tall. But for accuracy's sake, no, I am a relatively not tall Caucasian male in my early 40s with graying brown hair and glasses. And I am joined here by Milena, who I will get to introduce herself and tell you all about herself, and then Franco after that.
So thanks for having me. I'm honored and humbled to have been asked to be here to speak about technology. Let me prelude with, I am one person of about 52,000 in Nova Scotia who is blind and or partially sighted. I am completely blind. I do use some technology, but not all of it. Not the sharpest tool in the house. However, I have friends who are sharper than me and probably the sharpest tools in the house. A little self-description for myself. As I said, I'm completely blind. My eyes are fake. They're dark brown, the BS part of me. I have dark hair coming in.
It's coming.
It's coming, yeah. Blake tells me it's coming. Today I'm wearing a greenish sort of top. I don't know when I pulled that out of the closet. I was in a bit of a rush, and I have a nose ring and piercings in my ears, and I travel around the city with not a piece of technology, but my guide dog, Hope. And I sit on many committees, including Active Transportation Advisory Committee, Common Roots Urban Farm, just to list a few. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And Franco, if you can tell us about yourself.
Absolutely. I am the Boss 24 facilitator here at reachAbility, and we try to support folks that have had challenges with the law and live with ADHD. Also, we support folks that might be experiencing anxiety, depression, and yeah, that's basically it.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being here today. So Jeff and I initially had a conversation about this topic, technology and disability. And the initial title for this was going to be, Is Technology the Great Equalizer? But it took a very short conversation with each of you to realize that it's a much more complicated answer than yes or no. So first of all, and as much as I don't like to start on a negative, but we might as well examine that side and then end on a positive note. I did want to ask each of you, and I should specify too, Milena, you're going to be talking from a first person perspective a lot. And Franco, you're going to be speaking a bit first person, but also the experiences of your clients who are living with ADHD.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Okay. So the first question that I had for each of you is, what is, Milena, in your case, yours, Franco, in your case, yours, and your clients' current number one frustration when it comes to newer technologies? So Milena, you and I have talked about this a bit recently because you've been running into a few different items, but I'm curious what your number one frustration with newer technologies is these days.
Newer technologies, I'm going to break it down probably into two categories. I'd say number one, website design, particularly with businesses and restaurants, where many web pages in particularly are unlabeled buttons, no description, links that do not work unless you you are sighted. And let's keep in mind I am completely blind. I use a screen reader, which is called JAWS, Job Accessibility with Speech. It's a high-end piece of technology being used by not such a high-end person, but it's very clear to see that websites. So that would be if we're dealing on the technological part, website. In the built environment, right now, what is happening is access into buildings. So building touch screen entrance systems that have no voiceover, no tactile, and therefore I cannot get into an apartment building to let my friends know that I am there, because to this day, Nova Scotia has not put that into code, and there's many issues happening there which we won't discuss. So it's a lot of touch screen, flat screen that do not have voiceover or tactile. Anything that those are my two biggest frustrations.
Okay.
End of thought.
I have some thoughts and notes on both of those I'm going to get back to after we talk to Franco here for a second. But Franco, what would you say after talking to your clients from an ADHD mental disability perspective? What do they find is the biggest frustrations with technology, with newer technologies emerging currently?
Well, I think you put it best when you said it's a complicated situation. It's not just a straightforward answer. And that applies to the folks we've been working with. First of all, not all technologies are available to folks who are basically on survival mode.
Yeah.
Um, first things comes first, and it's living day by day, getting by.
Mhm.
So strategies, apps, technology that is designed to establish routines to help folks follow through with work, with appointments, really becomes secondhand matter. It's not at the forefront of their needs at that time.
Right.
And second of all, some of them don't even know that there are technologies or supports out there for them. So I would say that the biggest roadblock that they encounter is knowing what's out there.
Okay.
And when they do come across something that is super helpful, they don't have the support to walk along with them and show them how it's used, all the possibilities. Because if you're not familiar with ADHD, it might be very interesting and super helpful at that time.
Mhm.
But if someone is not there to remind you, support you, it just
It's a flash in the
yeah,
pan sort of situation.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
This is interesting because to me, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but it almost sounds like when it comes to, to people who can't see or have limited vision, it sounds like some of the technology is just not being utilized or not being available. Whereas from the ADHD side, it's almost like there's too many options and no education about which ones work the best. Okay. Website design was one I hadn't expected, which I should have because you and I have worked on website design together before. So that's one thing I actually wanted to ask on is we can design websites that are very accessible for people with visual impairments. You and I have worked to make our own website here more accessible from that side. Is it just a matter of a lack of foresight or a lack of care on the designer's part? Because when we built our website here at reachAbility, and I mean, we're a little spoiled for resources. We know good people we can call. But it's not hard to pick up the phone and call even one person and say, hey, who would you recommend who would help me with this? You, I know, could have recommended probably 5 different people right off the top of your head that could have helped me. You just happen to be available to help me. So is it just that people aren't giving thought to people with disabilities right out of the gate that's causing the problem?
That's a good question. And for those online who can't see me, I took in a deep breath. I had to do a little pause to think about it. The truth of the matter is, I think what has happened in society, and there'll be no disagreement on it, is society for the most part has become very visual. I do not subscribe to Facebook, nor Instagram, no any of that social media. And to echo what Franco was saying, a lot of information is coming through. It is not coming through let's call it the older media forms, radio, television. For example, Human Rights Week. A bit of a surprise here for me. Where was this posted? I wasn't aware of that. So that's coming across, and not every blind or partially sighted person wants to be on social media. And when it comes to the social media and to the website designs, again, it's the visual thing. Let's take restaurants, for example. All right. I could probably name off, I'm a bit of a foodie, and I want to know in advance what I'm going in and heading in for. And it's all pictures, JPGs, not labeled. So I can't read the menu at all. When I call the restaurant politely and say, hey, would love to come there. I'm blind. Your menu online is not accessible. Could you please make certain that there's a Word format or a link to it or address it? The answer to this is quite shocking to me. How do we do that?
Really?
Yes, it's I would say 8 out of 10.
It's nice of them to put the responsibility back on you right away.
Right,
That's very decent
I
of them,
said,
yeah.
well, it's pretty easy. You can look in and put in the Word format if your menu is changing. Do likewise, right? So it's again because things look pretty. We want to, and again, I'm talking from the perspective of someone who's blind or partially sighted. There are visual learners, and I understand that.
Mhm.
So as long as we understand my point of view, I think it's just society has become overwhelmingly interested and vested in what is visual.
I think you're right. I mean, talking about not finding news from traditional sources anymore, like I'm almost embarrassed to admit how much current events news I get updates from TikTok or from Instagram or something, because I don't watch TV. I don't know how I would even get a local channel at this point.
Yeah.
I honestly have no idea. So you're right, it is definitely getting more visual. And one thing that I'm sure stymies you a lot, because I run across it all the time, part of my job at reachability is that I'm the annoying person who comes behind everybody and says, did you have alt tags on that? Do you have camel text on that? Do you have you made it as accessible as possible? Around here, folks are pretty great at that. I like to think so. But other folks on social media, anyone running a business, I would think if you want to have as many clients as possible, if you want to have as many customers through your door as possible, you want to make sure you're getting your message out there. And you're right, I see photo posts we'll pick on restaurants, because you're right, they do photo menus a lot now. Very rarely is there any alt text whatsoever. Yeah. And then on the other hand, ADHD rules TikTok. Like, my one issue with TikTok, and full disclosure, I'm a person with ADHD as well. It's an almost overwhelming amount of often contradictory content. Is this something that you run into as well in your clients?
Absolutely. Some clients that are on the younger side and much rather getting information from social media do come across an overwhelmingly amount of information that they don't know what to sort through. They don't know which one is going to help them, which one's going to support them. And when you're interested in having all that information, you just become a information dump.
Yeah.
And never put anything into practice.
Yeah.
And like you said, a lot of that information is contradictory. So folks just end up saying like, oh, I have this interesting fact that I will never use because I don't know how faithful it is to what I have.
Yeah, I find it's delivered too in a way where this will 100% confidence help you manage your ADHD. And it's like, okay, my ADHD doesn't look necessarily anything like Franco's. We may manage things in very different ways. Now, Milena, you said that the touchscreens that you're talking about, if we're going into the apartment buildings, and we've looked at these, we've gone and explored these together, and I can't imagine how you would even begin to approach them. It's a flat sheet of glass. There's nothing in code, you say, currently to work around that?
Not in the Nova Scotia building code. Under the Accessibility Directorate, which is the built environment, that law has not been passed yet. It's at probably a year and a half behind. April of 2025, looking, but I was privy to read something from the Department of Justice that, including in the built environment, and I'm paraphrasing here, not getting it exactly correct, that touchscreens are kind of out of scope for the built environment, which doesn't make any sense to me. So just to clarify, so I walk into a building, it's a flat screen, it doesn't talk, there's no buttons to push. It doesn't cost the developer that much to install this system into their 350 unit building. Because when they don't do that, what in fact they have done is they have locked me and the rest of my colleagues who are blind and partially sighted out. So for the fun of it, I'll swipe every single screen that I can, and 350 unit apartments answer. Okay. On the other side, beside the building, you go into your local restaurant or grocery store, and again, flat screen, digital payment systems, right? So unless you have tap, which I believe we don't need to be forced to have tap on your debit or your credit cards, we have to give our pins, no matter what you're using, to the cashier.
Oh.
And how is that equitable or safe to begin with? There is technology that is out there, not too expensive, that does provide some tactile on these digital, give me the word, what they're called, machines where you're doing
the debit machine, the
debit
PIN
machines,
terminal, yeah.
Yeah, the PIN terminals. So those are out there, right? And it's a matter of making the business is aware of that. And then I'll move directly into the home that, again, so my father, as an example, bought himself a toaster oven, flat screen. No talking, no nothing. I can't use it if I'm visiting my parents. Okay, try and find an older version where they're actually knobs, almost non-existent. Microwaves, touchscreen, no tactile. You can't, you can mark them up with Braille, but again, or a dot to register. My oven, I have to put buttons and remember and count what temperature I'm at, 350, 495, and it's not very good when you're having wine and cooking because you sometimes forget what number you're at, right? So again, that technology is out there. It should be mandated across the country, across our nations, that there should be a voice over system in there, because the truth of the matter is it's not equitable. It's great for certain other disabilities, but not for the blind and partially sighted.
And I think sad part is, and I could be wrong, but I think the decisions are being made based on aesthetics more than on being more utility to a different disability either. I think it's just a looks sort of perspective. So,
and if I, sorry, just if I could throw in, so for the household goods, if you wanted, there are specialized companies that do sell, example like microwave and your toaster oven and your Instapot, but the price to have something from those specialized companies who are working for the blind and partially sighted is 3 to 4 times more expensive than for the average person. And considering our numbers of underemployed or unemployed people with disabilities, you tell me who can afford, as Franco had mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Well, it leads me into something that you and I talked about before this too, is cost. I mean, your JAWS program that you use for your computer, we had a conversation many months ago about this. And if you're comfortable telling people how much that screen reader technology costs, I almost passed out when you told me how much it was. I couldn't believe it.
The going rate for, let's also step aside. There are many other programs.
Sure.
Yeah, so I just chose what I chose, and you're looking at about $2,000.
Yeah.
For a brand new screen reader program, which can read Excel and so on. If you're also paying for the updates and everything else, so
yeah.
Ching, pa-ching, pa-ching.
And are there, to your knowledge, are there programs in Nova Scotia to help to cover these sort of costs, or is there a gap in terms of funding?
To my knowledge, and for those listening out there in internet technology land, I am about 70 to 80% certain still that in Nova Scotia, if you lose your sight later on in life, unless you are going back to a schooling program, university, whatever the case may be, then you can get a grant. But there is nothing that is there unless you have your own insurance, and even that can support you. Unlike Ontario, where there are resources where you can go and have technology for the blind and partially sighted, free of charge, and they run it, or they were running it at a bit of a big brother system. So you're kind of checked upon, and if you're using these programs, great. If you're not using them, then they kind of take them back, which to me, I think is fair enough.
Yeah.
Because it really is nobody's business whether I want to return back to work or whether I want to be at home and start my own. But I don't need to go to a university or a college setting to look for a grant, which is about the only way to get technology for the blind and partially sighted. And again, there are lots of free programs that are speeding along to make things accessible, but if you want to be right at the top of the line, it's going to cost a lot.
Yeah. No, I was really surprised about the going back to school coverage in particular, because ultimately, if the entire goal is to reduce barriers to participation in society and increase independence, you would think something like encouraging someone to take up entrepreneurship would be exactly the person who you would want to give the screen reader technology to.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to limit it to just back to school. But don't get me wrong, I'm glad some funding is there, but at that cost and for something that useful, I was very shocked that there wasn't more coverage available out there. And Franco, at the lower level, a lot of the stuff we're talking about, ADHD technology, is very cell phone based. I mean, you're even talking about costs there to have the latest technology that can run the latest apps and that can keep up to task with these. I mean, a lot of your clients are not in a position necessarily to be affording this either, are they?
Not at all. And it's understandable that a lot of the apps available are very helpful. I always recommend if you have the cash.
Yeah.
Inflow. It supports folks, giving them understanding around their particular symptoms, and it helps folks get organized on task and reach their own personal goals.
Mm.
However, it's a monthly paid system,
Yeah.
and folks are not going to decide to pay this instead of paying groceries or
No, of course.
other things they need to live, right?
And I know from our conversations around the office too, there's very little funding for any of those sort of supports.
And it's really sad to know because ADHD is one of the most manageable conditions
Yeah.
to live with.
Yes.
And but again, it comes down to knowing what's out there and how to use it, not just what's available.
Yeah. And what's available that will work for you. Because
Exactly.
again, everybody's very different.
Very different.
Okay. Well, so we've covered that things are costly, there's not much help available, and things are headed in the wrong direction. So why don't we spin it a little more positive now? Because I know it's not all bad news. We do have positive conversations about technology around here pretty frequently as well. We'll start with Milena. What is an example of a technology that is currently making your life easier on a daily basis that you would recommend for someone who is either blind or partially sighted that they may not have discovered yet?
So I'll say my boyfriend. And he's not AI, not yet. He's blind as well, and he has an iPhone. Again, try and get an iPhone with the Siri and whatever that's, it's out of pocket expense. That there's, unless somebody's donating something to you. However, if he'll come over and some of the AI to snap a picture, be my eyes. There are quite a few free apps on your iPhone for the blind and partially sighted. So if we're going out and then I'm like, oh, what color? Like for today, like he wasn't with me today, and I'm like, I don't know what color this is. I don't remember. So I could have had him take a picture, and then his iPhone would have told me what color my top is, which I think is green.
It is green. It's a very nice green too. Yeah.
Oh, it's a very nice green.
It is a very nice green.
Okay.
It's not a forest green. It's not that dark.
It's not forest.
Yeah.
Okay. So the AI technology, the Be My Eyes and the free apps that are available for the blind and partially sighted. Again, if you can afford an iPhone and the pricing on such thing like that. I will say during COVID, when Zoom came on board, I think that's when it was about, it opened up the world immensely, not only for employment for people who are blind or partially sighted, but connecting us all throughout the country, from coast to coast to coast. So where we were in discussions again with other people with disabilities or the blind and partially sighted, they were mostly local or on the ground or just within your area. Now you can get on and there's games being played and you're going across to the US and you're going and you're also doing it from the luxury of your own home. So Zoom and Zoom, I will say, has been, I think, one of the most, for me, responsive for the needs of the blind and partially sighted. Teams took a little bit longer to get on board, but they're really great there. So those connections to talk to people, to connect, to find out, to it has really opened up the world for people who are blind and partially sighted. From my perspective, and from my colleagues and friends that I'm hearing about. So that's been really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm very happy that our positive discussion led us to a silver lining for COVID. That's really positive. So thank you for that. No, that's fantastic to hear. I wondered about Zoom and those sort of platforms in general, and the shift to kind of remote work and to teleconferencing, if that had been helpful or not. So it's really good to hear that it has.
Yeah.
Franco, what about with your clients? What sort of technologies are they using that's really kind of making a positive difference in their managing of their ADHD?
Well, interestingly enough, I have to say that apps that have reminders are incredibly useful.
Yeah.
And the more folks become comfortable using them, the better they are at staying on task. However, on the other hand, the advent of technology has also allowed folks that learn on their own terms to take on an enormous amount of projects that they wouldn't have in traditional ways of approaching knowledge. For example, folks that all of a sudden want to learn how to draw have infinite amount of supports online at your own pace. Folks that have that want to start recording music have infinite ways of getting to that. So it has become an outlet, a very positive outlet for their creativity or their interests, whereas in the past it would have been practically impossible to get their hands on because of costs, schooling, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, this is something I can definitely relate to as someone who finds it immensely painful to sit in a classroom and be taught. I always say I love to learn, I hate to be taught. So yes, I'm often on YouTube trying to conquer a new challenge for myself, so I can definitely identify with that. What was the name of the app you said, Milena? Was it Be My Eyes? Is that?
Yeah, it's one of them is Be My Eyes, and there are many others, and with the Be My Eyes you can actually take a picture with the AI. Now, forewarning, do not trust your AI photos.
There's a reason I brought this back up, and I was hoping you were going to tell this story, so please do.
So I nothing dirty here, no cautionary tale. I'm in the bathroom, brushing my teeth, and my boyfriend decides to snap a picture, and the AI Be My Eyes says, two people presenting as a woman, brushing their teeth, dressed all in gray, etc., etc. And I turned around and said, what did that say? Two people. And for a moment I thought, who's the other person in the bathroom with me? Right? So but what it was, because there was a reflection from mirror to mirror, one on my bathroom door, one above the sink, and AI couldn't understand. And so, under the Be My Eyes, you can ask it really detailed questions. What color is the hair? How many gray hairs? Or what is it? So it really, but be forewarned, it may not always necessarily be true. Now, if that's not giving you enough information, then you can also find someone online. And this can be anywhere in North America. These people are specially trained. I've heard even Beyonce has answered once in a while. Not my favorite artist, by the way. I'm scrunching my face here for those who can't see me.
Milena's clearly a Swiftie, but that's okay.
No, not Swiftie either. But okay, so then you have a live human being. For example, we were at the service park with my guide dog. I hope she was running around and just not responding because she's, digging things and having the best time of her life. So we actually had to call a volunteer. Again, this is free of charge. And my boyfriend had moved his iPhone around the park that's fenced in, and the live volunteer said, oh, the dog's there digging something by the tree. Fabulous. So, that kind of stuff is great. If you're a person who loves your iPhones, and if you're someone who can afford that as well. So
it's just for iPhone, is it? It's not for Android, as far as we know.
I can't answer that. I'm pretty sure it's mostly compatible with iPhones. I don't know about Android, so I've never seen anyone use it with an Android, but
okay.
Maybe Jeff would even know something on that one. So
yeah,
I'm
going to look into this too, and because I'd also be very curious about how you sign up to become a volunteer, because that sounds like a really cool service. So if anyone has any questions after this in the next little bit, you can write me at blake@reachability.org, and I will be finding out how to volunteer. I see Jeff's face is on the monitor here. He's about to chime in. So Jeff, we'd love to hear from you on this.
Yeah, I actually have used Be My Eyes a number of times before, and if you download the app on iOS or Android, there is an option when you open the app to volunteer. You can either check in as a user or as a volunteer. And an interesting sort of add-on to what you've been saying, Milena, is that I recently purchased a pair of Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses.
Yes.
Kind of out of the box are fun. They're designed as a kind of a broad market tool for folks that want to take videos with their glasses and post them to Instagram or Facebook or the like. But the side benefit is that folks within the blind and visually impaired community have found them particularly helpful. You can't ask it to describe the what's in front of you. And they've actually partnered with Be My Eyes so that now, if you're wearing the glasses, you can ask it to call a volunteer on Be My Eyes. And while you're wearing the glasses, it can engage a live volunteer who will then see the video that is coming through your glasses, so what you're looking at, and then they can describe it through the speakers on your ear. So it's evolving technology, and the partnership between Be My Eyes and Meta has taken this sort of broad market kind of product, which is, for made for fun and fashion with Ray-Ban, but now it's become a really powerful tool for the blind and visually impaired. So it is interesting to see when a tool that is designed for aesthetics and for fun can suddenly become a tool that is then very helpful to people in the blind and visually impaired community or folks with other disabilities. So yeah, just wanted to add in, I'm quite excited about that tech.
No,
And Jeff, sorry, just what was if you don't mind revealing the price, because I'm pretty sure I know, but
just about to.
yeah, what's
Thank
the
you.
price
Yeah.
on those fancy little glasses? Because yeah, they sound awesome.
Not cheap, Milena, but they're around the price of a prescription pair of eyeglasses. So, the
Yeah.
$500 to $600 range. I know from watching this technology evolve over the years is that there was recently an Envision pair of glasses, which cost thousands and thousands of dollars, which again are products that are targeted specifically to the blind and visually impaired community, which is a much smaller market. And so they can, I guess, justify having such a high price point because they imagine they're not going to sell as many pairs as, say, would Meta, who are then able to make the price a little bit more accessible. It's still a hefty chunk of money. And I am fortunate to have a medical coverage that would cover a portion of a pair of prescription eyeglasses every 2 years or what have you. So I was able to offset the cost a little bit with some of that insurance coverage, but far more accessible, $500 or $600 than $4,000 or $5,000 for the Envision glasses. So it's exciting to see it kind of coming to more of a reasonable price point.
That is, and this actually leads perfectly to my last question, because I'm very curious. This is our in a perfect world question. I'm using air quotes in front of you, Milena. I'm being very, very helpful today. I apologize. In a perfect world, what technological innovation would you each like to see that would significantly improve your daily quality of life? And Milena, we'll start with you. What's your pie in the sky, your dream technology that would make a big difference for you?
Oh boy, honestly, I want all my old dials back where I can, turn and push a button to dial my phone, and also walk around with one of those glasses Jeff has.
That sounds pretty fun.
Because and for the glasses, it would be more for safety on the streets, because right now nothing is safe. That's a whole other topic to be discussing, right? But as far as I miss that, the just go to my oven and turn the dial, and I know exactly where I am or what needs to be done. And that to be said, because I've been blind for 30 years, it is a very fortunate thing for me that this technology exists, because more than likely, I guarantee you, I wouldn't be sitting here today having a discussion about technology if we didn't have technology, and I don't think I'd be surviving without what we have today when it comes to the blind and partially sighted.
It's kind of a scathing indictment of the direction of technological change, though, that your greatest wish is to go back to the dials and buttons. It makes complete sense to me, but it just seems that we've completely headed in the wrong direction by making everything so smooth and touchless. We haven't really considered the needs of every customer, which seems a bit silly when the motivation of these companies is to make money selling you things. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were clearly headed in the wrong direction there, but I love that answer because it puts the whole thing into very negative perspective for me. Franco, what about you and your clients? What would your kind of pie in the sky ideal technological assistance be?
To be very honest, I think that what would help more would be going back to one payment services.
Okay. Instead of like a monthly subscription, you're
Yes,
talking. Okay.
that seems to be, and it's understandable why,
Hmm.
but going back to just pay once
Yeah.
for that service and maybe pay, because I know I understand capitalism
Hmm.
and folks need to make money, right?
Hmm.
Perhaps to upgrade or some perks, you would shovel in some money, but monthly paid services are really what keep people away from apps that would very much help their particular situations.
I get that. Like I might be able to save up a little initially to make the one-time payment to get this thing that can help me a great deal. But why am I going to take the gamble of paying this month because I can find out that it's amazing, possibly life-changing in terms of allowing me to organize my thoughts in my life. And then the next month I simply can't afford it anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's almost a tease. Okay. So we're looking to move backwards for our innovation on technological change. Okay. So that seems to be our solution for the day is that we move backwards. We're
A little bit.
a little bit, yeah. But honestly, we should make the point too, before we get to the Q&A, we're almost at Q2 here. But a lot of the shortcomings we've talked about today are by choice. It's not that the solutions aren't there. Like your intercom systems, we've talked about this before.
Mhm.
There are current voice packages that can be
Mhm.
installed, and the option was likely there at the time of purchase already to install that.
Yeah.
But a money-saving choice is no, don't serve everybody.
Well, and the truth of the matter is, so last week I did a presentation to Nova Scotia Building Official Association. These are the top guys, Red Seal approved for the most part, that are inspecting buildings, and now they're also looking all across the province to, from the accessibility point of view as well. So I did a presentation there, and I brought in slides from certain buildings. One that had a touch screen from a year ago, and which had absolutely no accessibility from the blind and partially sighted perspective. I believe also it wasn't the best convenience for someone using a wheelchair either. So what this developer did, kudos to them, was and this was there, they also attached a dial pad right alongside it, so that now obviously I would have to know Franco or Blake, what apartment you're in. I push 305, whatever the number is, and hit enter on the dial pad that's attached to the touchscreen. Bingo, off I go. Very simple, not expensive. That's what they did. But this developer didn't need to do it, nor will they. So yeah, it's all right now up in the air as to what people choose to do. And I hope people choose to go and make things accessible for all involved, because businesses, you'll get more of us out there,
Mhm.
right? And buildings, maybe we'll be visiting more for whatever the case may be. I mean, you're talking capitalism, make it as accessible to everyone, because then you make more money.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's funny, I do tend to boil it down to selfish motives, selfish profit motives too when I talk to company owners, because if it's not in the code, I'm not going to expect someone to do it out of the goodness of their heart. I wish I could. I wish that was the world that we lived in.
Yeah.
If I can explain to someone in the most bare terms, you will get more and more loyal customers if you make yourself more accessible.
Yeah.
Like, how likely are you to go back to a business that has taken any step to make themselves more accessible to you, versus one that you go back to 3 times in a row and say, hey, I'm still trying to order online. All of your menus are still pictures. Why would you patronize that company?
As a matter of fact, I have not gone back to several because they haven't done so, and I'm not going there. I'm not going to bother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And good. And the next best thing you can do is tell a friend who tells a friend, and none of us are going to go there either, because no, we want to go someplace where everyone we're going can actually get in the door and feel welcome. So
Yeah.
no, I'm glad you tell me those when you start boycotting businesses. We won't start naming names today. That's not what this pattern is about, but that's okay. We're at just past Q2. Jeff, did you want to turn it over to see if there's any questions, and we'll give some answers, hopefully.
No questions yet. So there's 2 comments. So I will remind folks that now's a great time to drop any questions they might have in the Q&A. A comment from Max was to confirm that Be My Eyes is available on Android. So that's
Wonderful.
2 sources of confirmation. We can consider that to be pretty factual. And then another clarification from Max was to ask, he's familiar with alt text, but he thought that he heard someone say something about camel text.
Yes. Let me look this up and make sure I get it right. Actually, you know what? No, let's just assume I know what I'm talking about today. So camel text is if you're doing, and please someone in the comments correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're doing a hashtag, and let's say my hashtag is Milena is the greatest, because it often is. What you want to do is each individual word in that hashtag, you want to capitalize the first letter so that way when a screen reader reads it out, it doesn't read it as Milena is the greatest. It reads it as hashtag Milena is the greatest. Does that sound correct to you? I believe I know what I'm talking about with camel text. It's one I haven't referenced the name of in a long time, but yeah, the going rule of thumb is that if you're using hashtags is that you capitalize the first letter of each individual word so it doesn't sound like mush entirely.
I actually didn't know what that was called, but yeah, but that is out there, and
Okay.
it works best with screen readers.
Yeah. Why it's called camel text, that I could not
No
I'd be
idea.
begin
guessing,
to tell you, but that's what we've referred to it as in the past. Yeah.
I'd be guessing, but I would say that the camel reference is probably due to the fact of the humps where it goes up and then down visually. Probably adding that capital letter in the middle provides some sort of reference to that sort of humps in a camel's back. That would
Makes
be
more logical sense than anything that was going through my brain, Jeff. So we'll take it. Thank you.
Just as we wait for folks to post any additional questions in the Q&A, I did want to bring a bit of insight because we started the meeting with a bit of irony around the tech not working, and now the coincidence is, Milena, that you're speaking about certain things falling outside the scope of the standard developments committees, in particular around the built environment, say, and the touch screens. I'm presently chairing the Information and Communication Standard Development Committee, which will begin its work in earnest in January and take about 18 months to go through a pretty rigorous process of consultation and consulting around barriers and potential options, doing jurisdictional scans across the country and other jurisdictions, the states and elsewhere who have gone through this process before, so as not to reinvent the wheel, but then bring a recommendation forward for Nova Scotia that would suit our particular context. I'm aware that although some standards have gone through this process of developing draft standards, there are certain aspects or scopes that are maybe being reassigned, say, to the Information and Communications Standard Development Committee. So when you speak about a touchscreen, for example, that I think is one that would fall within the scope of information and communication technology. Similarly, wayfinding and signage, I believe, is being moved into the Information and Communication Standard Development Committee so that all of that work related to the conveyance of information and communication is being considered by a committee whose sole focus is on that exchange of information. And so I've also identified those point of sale terminals as areas that do require specific attention because everybody is forced to interact with them regardless of, how they prefer to engage. So ensuring you that the issues that you've identified in this conversation today will be part of the discussions going forward, and to let you know too that there is representation from a broad selection of communities in this work, including the blind, the deaf-blind, deaf and hard of hearing. So all sorts of different experiences and first voice are going to be at this table. So I'm with you as a person who's blind and visually impaired. When I go to pay at the end of my meal, I have no idea what sort of machine I'm going to face. Is it going to be one from the early 2000s that's fallen apart, or is it going to be a modern one that has only tap enabled and the tips are all automatically set at whatever rates, and I have to just go through and hope for the best? So yeah, it's certainly of concern, and I just wanted to let you know that yeah, we are working on that, and that is really exciting and important work. And there'll be opportunities throughout this process for folks from across the disability community to contribute through consultation to identify barriers and issues that they're experiencing, just like you've identified today, Milena. So I wanted to say thanks for raising it. And I did notice that there are a few other questions that have just been posted in here. So without further ado, it's a comment mentioning how screens are not tactile. Car companies have changed to these same smooth screens in cars, and now it requires that people are had to look at their screens in order to access the functions, but now they're putting the tactile designs back in cars to reduce the amount of distraction for drivers. So having the touch screens actually resulted in more distraction.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Another question here is, what is the best way for government to gather information from low vision users, i.e., reviewing, renewing driver's licenses? And I would add provincial identification cards in the same way. So if the government is looking to gather information on the best ways to serve folks, they have a question here. Is it PDFs? Um, any barriers more prominent in one method or the other? So just generally, Milena, if government is looking to access information from people in the blind or visually impaired community, is there a preferred method that folks should be following?
Um, I, I'm a little confused on the question. Like the government wants to send out information to ask, because in that case, all across the board, no matter how proficient you are with whatever screen reader, whether you're using your Android or iPhone or a desktop, you know, and from what I hear, Jeff, in my circles, is Word. In the Word format is the best. PDFs don't always work. Depends on how they're lack of a better word, drafted up and, you know, and processed. So, you know, if that's what the question is, then I would answer it that way, unless I'm misunderstanding, and then perhaps that could be clarified.
Yeah, I think that you've gotten it, and I'll chime in again to say that this exact question will be one that the Information and Communication Standard Development Committee will be addressing as well, ensuring that standards are put in place for government and businesses to ensure that there are options. Because I think, Milena, the best course of action is always to have a few different options rather than to say, this is the only way to submit information or this is the only way to give you information. Maybe a few different options, including Word or an accessible, fillable PDF that meets certain design standards.
I would say, sorry, Jeff, I would say go to the Vocal Eye, VOCALI. This is an organization primarily that was started in the UK for audio described live performances and events and venues. Huge sister program out in British Columbia. I've partaken in both ends, in the UK and there. And if you go onto their website, the Vocal Eye, you will notice one of the first things on there, it has a, you know, font, pick your font, pick your format on how you want to read, in a PDF, in a Word, or a downloadable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is what needs to be done with the government. And this is what needs to be done, I think, all across the board when it comes to that kind of stuff. I'm not sure for anybody with any other disability. I'm looking at Franco here, right? But for the blind and partially sighted or visually impaired, I highly recommend checking the website out for under the Vocal Eye.
That's VOCALEYE.
Correct, yeah. And it's free to join. So if anybody wants to listen to plays out in Vancouver, Whistler, or anything like that, and just to see what audio description is all about, it's you can sign up and they'll send you newsletters. It's great. I love them.
Thank you, Milena.
Yeah.
That's it for questions. I do want to provide an opportunity, Blake, for you to revisit the podcast that you mentioned. I was really excited to hear that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. Thank you. So here at Reach for the last 9 months, we've been working on a podcast called Within Reach. It is covering basically every topic we can come up with related to accessibility, equity, inclusion, disability. Basically, when someone shows up at my door and says, I'm really riled up about this topic, I just scramble and grab a microphone as quickly as I can. It's hosted by myself and a local HR lawyer, actually, Shelley Allward McLeod, who runs HR on the Go is the name of her company. So she brings the more formalized legal perspective to it. I tend to bring I am all riled up about this topic today kind of perspective to it. Imagine that from me. But that will be launching in January. You'll be able to find links on our socials, which you can find through reachability.org. And again, the name is Within Reach. We're also still going to be recording new episodes in the new year. So if you have something that you want to talk about that you're particularly passionate about that's related to accessibility, inclusion, disability, equity, write me at blake@reachability.org, and I would love to talk to you about coming on the podcast. We've had some really great discussions, and I'm really excited to get our first episodes out early in the new year.
That's great. Thank you, Blake. And folks can also Google reachability, find you on all those social platforms to connect with your organization as well. Any last words from Franco, Milena, or yourself before we wrap it up?
Do you have anything you want to add, Milena?
Franco, go first. Why
Franco,
am I
go first? Because I'm right-handed and you're on my right. It's my default.
I'd like to say that don't feel discouraged, because not finding the right answer immediately doesn't mean that there aren't supports out there. There's a lot of things available. You do have to dig deep, but fortunately, there's a lot out there for folks, and like we've said, it's the most treatable of conditions.
Yeah.
And don't hesitate to reach out and ask for help.
Since you were kind enough to join us here today too with your perspective, I want to give you a bit of a plug in your course too. Franco talked about it very briefly at the start, but Boss 24 is the course that he facilitates. It is specifically for people who are currently in conflict with the law, who also identify as having ADHD. And Franco, you've been a great help for a number of clients. We've seen a lot of good testimonials. We have at least one client I know of who avoided jail time as a result of their participation in this program. So you're doing real hard work and you're doing it very well. So thank you.
I'm very happy for the results. Very happy to help.
Very glad. Milena, anything you would like to add, or would you like to let people know where they can find you, because you have all kinds of exciting things to say on all kinds of topips. I know I get to hear it.
Well, you can find me through Blake. I will say on the debit machines and restaurants, I'm not, this isn't the plug, but one of the brands is Clover. And actually, any business that purchases Clover, there is a plastic rubber sort of kind of glove goes over the top of that flat screen. And they're and then therefore you can touch the tactile buttons. It still doesn't talk. However, it is at least something. So I will say, ask, wherever you are for the vendors on that, if this is a Clover machine, and a lot of the people don't know that this product comes with it, and they're just like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what this is for. The last thing that I will wrap up, which is what I've been saying in the past 2 years in any presentation that I'm doing. It is of my belief that in the 30 years that I've been blind and completely blind, that sadly, because we are a visual society, those of us who are blind and partially sighted quite often are being put to the back. Our human mind walks down the streets, goes into a business, and let's say there's a tree limb that's hanging low, you automatically will duck your head and forget to tell your blind or partially sighted friend who lives down the block, hey, don't go down this block. It's natural, but start to think on the accessibility side about the blind and partially sighted. We need that. I can't do this advocacy on my own, and the few of us that are out there, including Jeff, it's getting tiresome. So think from the perspective of a person who's blind, what they can do and how are they going to do it, no matter where you are and what you're doing, and I will love you the more. See you on the streets. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Technology includes even like the newest AI-powered smart glasses down to tree pruners. We would consider those to be important pieces of technology that could be used by folks as well.
Yeah, true.
Blake, how about you? Any last words?
Milena actually stole my last point. I was going to give that one for you. No, this is something that comes up all the time. The only thing I would add is something we say a lot. Is kind of a catchphrase I like to use around here a lot. Is never attribute to malice what can be attributed to ignorance. A lot of the things that are lacking accessibility aren't because somebody is being willfully cruel. they may not have considered it before. And like Milena just said, it shouldn't be all on Milena, it shouldn't be all on Franco, it shouldn't be all on one person to advocate for themselves. It is on all of us to advocate together. So if you notice something that is inaccessible and it's a relative, especially if it's a relatively easy fix, like moving a tree limb out of the way, yeah, go and talk to someone, have a friendly conversation. You'll be really surprised how a lot of times quickly, especially business owners, because again, selfish profit motive, they want more people to be able to access their business. They can often be really quick to make something more accessible.
Yeah.
They just honestly hadn't considered it before. And if you find yourself getting that kind of information and realizing, I've never thought of that before, try to remember that moment the next day and the next day and the next, and consider, what am I missing here today? What is in front of me that I can change to make more accessible today that I wouldn't have thought about until I had that conversation?
Perfect note to leave it on. Thank you, Franco. Thank you, Blake. Thank you, Milana. And thank you as well.
Milena! Jeff, I'm gonna run you over!
No, I'm pretty sure I said Milana that time. It is recorded, so post this within 24 hours.
That's why I say Ms. Khazanavicius.
Have a great
Easier,
afternoon.
yes.
Thank you very much. And please check out the Human Rights Commission's website for the upcoming Human Rights Week sessions that remain. Take good care.
Thanks, Jeff, and thanks
Thank
for
you.
including us.
Thank you, folks.